Hello and welcome. My name is Danielle. I'll be your host today as we discuss Awakening Starseeds Volume 1 and 2. Today we have a very special guest with us, Byron Bradley Carrier. He is a co-author in Awakening Starseeds of Volume 1 and 2. Welcome, Brian. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Danielle?
I'm doing well. And it's Byron. I apologize. I keep saying
That's all right. It happens a lot.
Well, I appreciate your time today and being here with us. Before we dive into your chapter, would you share with us a little bit about your background and what it is that brought you to this point?
Yeah, I can. I guess I'm on the front edge of the baby boom. I was born in 1945. It's in the stories. I was born on the same day they bombed Hiroshima. And so it's been kind of a background theme in my life a little bit, just knowing that fact. And grew up mostly in Michigan and stumbled around in high school and ended up getting a job at a funeral home, helping them over, and then learning that business, and then going to college in order to be a funeral director. And that got me to college and the funeral work, plus we ran ambulance for the area too, was interesting and very real. But I didn't want to spend all my time just doing that. And so I ended up going on in school, which I liked. I liked college and getting a bachelor's degree in psychology and philosophy. And by that time, I had been going to a Unitarian Universalist church. I hadn't gone to any church since I left the Catholic Church when I was 14. And I liked that they were more open-minded and inclusive of different points of view. So I ended up going to a seminary at the University of Chicago, eventually got a master's degree there in order to do a ministry for the Unitarian Universalist. And I did. I've done that for 50 years, kind of on and off, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit in Illinois, in Urbana, Illinois, a little bit in Eastern North Carolina, out in the country for a Universalist church. And then finally here in Ashland, Oregon, which is the southernmost town in Oregon, just above California on the freeway. And it's had an 8-year ministry here in this town, and while I was here, I got another group started in Grants Pass, which is a couple towns over. And that group ended up taking off too, as well as the Ashland group. So I'm now retired and considered what they call emeritus at the Grants Pass Fellowship. So I've had that sort of a kind of academic, professional, interpersonal kind of background through the ministry. It gets pretty intense sometimes. And I just also needed to work other than ministry because I never made much money at this. And I made a little bit more money doing rock walls. I stack up boulders and rocks in a way to hold the dirt up so that, because everything is steep here. So you create a rock wall and holds the dirt up, and the patio is flat and the face of the wall is pretty. So I did that for 20 years and very different than the academic route. And now I'm retired and I don't do the rock walls except for the fun of it now. And am attempting to do some writing of my own, and happen to know Radha and Maya, who are putting the Awakening Starseeds books together, and was invited to write something. So I did for the first one. People seemed to like it. So I wrote another one for the second edition, another point of view or something along that line. I'm a little bit different than some of the other entries in the book. I tend to not claim experience beyond what I really had, and not just copy what other people say about things. So that was my approach, was to value our physical bodies, and by extension, our ecosystem, as the primary place where we should be religiously concerned. That speculations about afterlife or God or the nature of God and all these things are always interesting to humans, but to me, it's more important to radically affirm, especially in our somewhat disconnected Puritan society, radically affirm our incarnation. We have a body for at least this one lifetime, and that's a magnificent opportunity. So that's kind of the gist of what I ended up writing about.
I love that. Now, what does the word starseed mean to you personally?
Pardon?
Oh, what does the word starseed mean to you?
Well, yeah, if you read what I wrote, you'll see that I take it literally. I believe that we are made of matter and energy, and that to consider the body as though it's unimportant is not wise. I think the picture of reality that science has put together is far more interesting and full of potential and possibility than the old stories that we heard about through various religious traditions and scriptures and whatnot. So the starseed, I guess I think I even mentioned Carl Sagan. I don't know if you know that name. He's a physicist, a scientist who made science popular back 2 or 3 decades ago. And he reminds us that everything that we use on the earth, and including our bodies, is made of stuff that came out of an earlier star that exploded. So we are reincarnated stuff from the star that blew up, went supernova 14 billion years ago. Or no, 14 billion was the start of everything, and then there was a protostar that went that blew up and created the larger molecules that we need to have life. And so I affirm that. I find it very inspiring to think of the actuality of physics and chemistry and biology coming together to create these thriving organisms, us and the rest of the animals. And then I'm interested in how culture teaches about that, and either helps us align with it and make it good, or too much. I think in religious traditions, they kind of ignore it or take it for granted or even denigrate it. And I'm again that approach. I think we should affirm our bodies and our ecosystem and treat both with a lot of love and ingenuity, and then things will get better again. Right now, the world climate, the COVID, all these things, all these challenges are because we're not taking it heartfully and thoughtfully enough. So I believe in the concept of Eden, as it were, not a specific place, but a planet that allows life. And we can, help that along, or we can ruin it. And in some ways, many things are being ruined right now. Species going extinct, where oceans heating up too much, getting acid. All these things are concerning to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that perspective too, because it's a little different than some of the others I've heard, and it'll speak to the individuals that,
Sure.
think in that way.
Different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How did you personally wake up to your starseed journey on a personal level?
Well, it helped to be an embalmer and to tend an ambulance, where I both was with people as they died, or I caught 1 or 2 people, got them going again. And I also caught a baby. I don't say I delivered the baby, I caught the baby, because they come out pretty slippery, when I was 18 years old. So in the back of an ambulance. So all this stuff to me is very important. We have actual birth, we have actual death, and actual bodies in the meantime. And I think that helped awaken me, but also my dad, who was not particularly religious. My mom was Catholic, and she had us raised Catholic. My dad wasn't. He would sit out in the parking lot during Mass, but he had read a book by Buck, B-U-C-K-E, Cosmic Consciousness, which is kind of like a previous generation's version of what Radha's doing with Awakening Starseeds. Various reports from people who have spiritual awakening experiences uh, usually very dramatic and life-changing.
Right.
And so that's kind of what's in the rest of the Starseeds book. Mine is more, I guess, rational to in terms of the philosophy of it, even though in my body, I want to experience joy and health, and I want to help other people find that too.
That's beautiful. Could you share with us a little bit about your upcoming chapter in Awakening Starseeds Volume 2?
Yeah, I'd have to remember it. I haven't read it for a while. I think I basically did what I just told you, that I was
Okay.
born on the Hiroshima day.
Mhm.
I had the funeral home ambulance experience, saw some gritty stuff there, and got to see how we're really constructed inside our bodies, just like they show you in the anatomy books. And, you know, it all works on our behalf automatically. We don't have to direct it. So to me, I'm very grateful for that process. And then because I was a Unitarian minister, they're very open to different ideas, including atheists and humanists, as well as mystics and whatnot. So I'm used to being around people of differing beliefs. And I like that. I like that there's diversity going on. But as a minister, I also ended up being involved in many death situations
Mm.
and birth situations and weddings and all that stuff. So it's a nice rounded approach to life. But the death situations, yeah, they can be a very sacred occasion. It can also be very anguished and full of pain and fear. But often people, they kind of accept it, and they go through the transition, whatever that transition is, at least peacefully as they enter it. I don't claim to know what happens after death, and as a minister, that really disappoints a lot of people who expect me to assure them that I know what's going to happen, and just like they think it's going to be. And I can't do that. I can do it, you know, if it's solace. If they really believe that they're going to see their dearly departed spouse, you know, I'm not going to say, no, you're not, you know. I'm going to say, yeah, I hope that happens, something like that. Yeah, that's it.
Wow, that's such a unique experience that not a lot of people have an opportunity to have, as far as the because the birthing process is a time of celebration, and you know, you get welcomed, but then when we pass, sometimes people don't realize the importance of someone being there with you and celebrating that transition, because this is a part of the evolution, and that is something we all experience at one point in our life. And to be alone, I feel like is unfortunate, but it's at the same time, like, if that's what, you know, they're going to experience, then that is the situation, and you'll never be alone because you're always with source. However, it is like you said, sacred to have that experience. So that's a very unique perspective. Not a lot of people have an opportunity to experience. Did you have any kind of what you would call mystical experiences during some of those
Well,
occasions?
yeah, because I'm interested in this stuff, you know, kind of philosophically.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I have another sidetrack. I met a man from India when I was at the University of Chicago named Dr. Vasavada, and he was an older man that had just come to the States after having trained with Carl Jung, a psychologist,
Oh,
the Jungian
yeah.
psychology. So he was an analyst,
Mm.
and he came to be a teaching analyst in the Chicago area, but he didn't drive. And so I would drive him around, we'd go shopping, and he had meditation groups, and I would sit with the meditation group, and we became friends over the years. And I went to India once with him. And so I have sought out those who say or claim some sort of claim as to, you know, spiritual person of some sort. I like to get in their presence and see what the vibe is. And so there's a bunch of them that I've been around.
Wow.
Um, and the blind saint was the main thing I went and saw in India. Although while I was in India, I ran into a man that was at that time just getting known and a bit notorious in India, named Rajneesh. And he had a darshan just in a nearby hotel to where I was recuperating because I gotten very sick. And so I went and saw him in person once. And then years later, I hear about him here in Oregon. And then I saw this marvelous documentary that Netflix has put together called Wild, Wild Country. It tells the story of Rajneesh here in India, but also mostly here in the United States. And he's quite a character. And I even though I had a reaction to him when I saw him in person and got a little bit mad about what he was saying, I didn't punch him. He was going on about how we are not the body and it's all Maya and the world is not real. But he had a big, diamond watch on. He had all these adoring women coming around him. And he was a beautiful man, had beautiful eyes, wonderful. But I said, and my thing was, I wanted to punch him. And that in order to ask him a question, I says, if you are not your body, Rajneesh, do you mind if I punch you again? But I didn't really want to hurt Rajneesh, and I never did that. But here's one of the after little experiences. One of the little tricks that happened was that as a meeting was breaking up, they came up and said, who are you? What are you, because there was just a few Westerners coming around at that time. Please come and join us for our morning meditation down on the beach. And I was really sick. And I went back to my room and I thought, I'm not going to get out of my bed and go to a morning meditation on the beach. It's very uncomfortable, But before I woke up, I had a dream where there was a meditation on the beach and there was a huge fire and everybody was dancing ecstatically around the fire. Well, maybe decades later, I find out that was their meditation.
Oh.
So maybe I did get to go to the Rajneesh meditation.
Yeah, you were there.
I've been interested in little events like that really happen that seem to carry a meaning, like synchronicities, I call them. And I also had a foot in the whole counterculture all this time. And the counterculture has various what we call entheogens. The word means entheogen, in God generate. And basically sacramental substances that give you vision. So beyond pot, which is pleasant and helpful in many ways, LSD, mescaline, peyote, the things that are like psychoactives, I've been interested in and messed around with a bit. And then a few years ago, I happened to take what is currently being used in ayahuasca. A lot of people are doing ayahuasca. And the main ingredient is DMT, 5-MeO DMT. And so I had two different experiences a couple of years apart with that. And it was so powerful and beautiful and overwhelming. I don't crave it anymore. It was just reassuring. So those experiences, when you really awaken to all kinds of other levels and thoughts than you typically can think or tend to think anyway, is intriguing to me as to what is the ultimate nature of reality. I try to just talk about the parts I think I know about, but I don't want to just say what I think people want to hear about the ultimate nature of reality. That we are God and we're an expression of that. And we'll realize that one way or the other, either in this life or over the many lifetimes, if that happens. But I don't know that it happens. I did ask various people during my lifetime to contact me because I knew they were dying, including my dad.
Oh, wow.
And if they could, and nothing's ever happened. But that might be because I'm too gross to hear it. I don't know.
So, and when you actually found out about Awakening Starseeds, what inspired you to write and be a co-author in Awakening Starseeds?
I was helped along by Maya. Maya is Radha's mother, and she's a very sweet and wise person. And she encouraged me, and she knew I did a little bit of writing. I have a webpage where I put stuff where I've given talks or written editorials or stories and things like that. So she knew I like to write, and she asked me to write something. And so I whipped up the first one. People seemed to like it. And so I whipped up another one, and you can read about it in the book.
I love it. Yeah. And this second one just came out on July 4th, and today's July 5th. So there is a pre-launch going on right now until the 17th.
Yeah, it's right now people can get it for 99 cents. It's a pretty good deal.
Oh, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
excited for them to read your second chapter. I mean, if they love the first one, they're going to love the second one. I know it for a fact.
Thanks.
How supported did you feel during the process while working with Rada Publications?
Oh, I'm glad that they're doing that. They're being entrepreneurial. You know, they're venturing out to gather these fantastic stories, and then I know they provide a lot of help to the people. Not everybody's used to writing. I've kind of come out of an academic background where I've read a lot and then written a lot, and so I'm kind of used to writing. It's easy for me in many ways, and I know some of the rules, which helps keep it makes it work better. But a lot of people don't necessarily have those skills, and they spend a fair amount of time helping them. And even in mine, there were suggestions that were made and corrections and improvements that brought it around. And I was pleased that they went ahead and used my thing, because in some ways it's different than the other entries in the book. I'm not recounting some fantastic experience that put me over the edge or into the new realm, like that Blake painting where he's crawling out of one fantastic realm through the veil into an even more fantastic one. So I'm not saying these things don't happen, but I don't want to exaggerate my experiences in that realm. I do affirm very, very deeply the one thing I found that has no downside, no drawback, and that's meditation itself. And so I've been a meditator for 50 years. And I like to think about the physiology of it, you know, what's going on in terms of our brain state and our metabolism and breath and the connection between breath and mind, all those things. But deeper than that, there's a calmness and a way of having the more important issues come up when you're close to the silence in meditation. And you know, you think of somebody that you hadn't thought of, but you should have, you know, or an idea maybe. So I like the meditation, and like I said, I was interested in the psychedelics, the entheogens from the counterculture, and then philosophically, you know, my whole career has been around people who dispute and talk back and forth about various ideas and what religion should be. And I have my own niche, which I think is unusual enough that a lot of people don't get it. But nonetheless, I persevere with what I think I know. I'm open to new stuff. I'm open to finding out I don't know.
I love that. You don't know what you don't know, and you're open to learning.
Like Donald Rumsfeld is one of the. He's actually right.
I think your perspective too is very much embraced by those who might be more left brain too. In some cases,
Be more what?
Like left brain, you know, like your left and
brain,
right, yeah, because it gives them a different perspective, you know, or it kind of speaks to them probably a little bit more so if you were speaking in a way that was less,
maybe
yeah,
so.
possibly, yeah. But with the, you know, being philosophical in general, I mean, I really think anyone who's philosophical has the ability to use both your hemispheres a little bit more balanced than, you know, that's the only reason why I bring that up. But yeah,
there's some interesting things overlapping between meditation and altered chemical states. I know a man who's very experienced in these realms, and he puts on psychedelic conferences and whatnot. And he put on a mind map hat, you know, where it has all the sensors built into the hat, and they can read different parts of the brain, what's going on where and everything. And took the 5-MeO DMT, and what they call the default mode network, which is a combination of parts in the back and in the front that are typically active all the time. And that's the thing we ruminate. We're thinking of stories. We got dramas, I want to do this. I want to do that. That's the default mode network that we might just call ego. But when he took the special stuff, that whole part just dropped away. It wasn't even there. The rest of his brain was still going. He's having this powerful spiritual experience. So it gives some credence to the notion of, you know, you're caught by your ego and you got to let your God self shine through. that makes some sense to me, that that might be the case. And in meditation, you kind of learn to not take the default mode network and all the little interesting stories that it presents you that seriously and try to get some detachment from it so that you're not overwhelmed by compulsive thoughts or worry or emotional traumas, all these things, pain, all these things can be somewhat, you can be detached from somewhat, so they're not ruining and running your life. And so I'm very appreciative that I've picked up that skill, meditation with Dr. Vasavita and others over my lifetime. And I'm interested in that possibility that our consciousness can leap into other realms of reality that are super fantastic. One man I read a lot of back in the 70s was a guy named Meher Baba. Meher Baba got enlightened when he was 18. Somebody hit him in the head with a stone, I think. And he went home and stopped eating, and it wouldn't, for days and days. His mother was very concerned. He ended up a few years later giving up talking, and didn't talk the rest of his life. And he also at one point gave up writing. He was writing a journal, and that got lost. Gandhi saw it. Mohandas Gandhi saw it and said, "This man is who he says he is." That was Gandhi's comment. But Meher Baba says, he says, I am the avatar. I'm, beyond the savior here. I've come here to awaken you. And there are 5 or 7 levels of spiritual advancement beyond the first waking up. Well, for a while, I was thinking maybe I'm just in the 5th level, but I'm not waking up in this lifetime, that kind of thought. But later on, I decided maybe I'm just on the gross level. I'm not even on step 1. But in any case, there very well might be these fantastic abilities, flying around, visiting other parts of the universe and all these things that I don't know. But some people say they do. I get attracted to those that claim to know that kind of stuff, but I'm not necessarily a believer. A guru who impresses me since I've learned about him is Ananda Murti. He's the head of the Nanda Marga worldwide work that they do. And he's very traditional Shiva guru type person, and has all kinds of claims that I don't know how to evaluate at all. But he also was a very practical, intelligent man, and he wrote these marvelous treatises on how to have a society that is locally generated and regenerative, and how the economics would work, how the ecology would work. And his Ananda Marga community tries to do that around the world. So I'm impressed with that kind of thing. I feel like we need rational, practical, intelligent, creative adaptations to our position as humanity right now, where everything's changing so rapidly and we're affecting the world so drastically, so suddenly, just in a matter of decades and whatnot, just an enormous impact. But to realize that, well, it doesn't have to be just for the bad. We could get this our rivers with more salmon in them like they used to have, and soil that keeps growing instead of getting washed away and blown away and stuff. So I'm interested in that side of things more than in the spiritual stuff, where I feel like I'm communicating with other beings or any of the things that many people claim to do.
Well, I think that's beautiful. And I wondered, so it sounds like you have a lot of experience, obviously, in meditation too. And, can you give us a few of your examples of life lessons that you learned throughout the journey that you've been on through your spiritual awakening? And
what do you mean by some experience?
Could you give us a few of your life lessons that you've learned along the way of growing through meditation, but awakening to your, spiritual awakening?
Well, it's pretty much like I've said so far, being around the bodies at the funeral home and delivering babies. I caught 2 of my own sons, home births. And so the psychedelics, which I do not eschew. Some spiritual people say, you don't need that, and maybe you don't need it, but I think they help. Entheogens, those things. And then just, I'm kind of politically aware, and it overlaps to technology a lot, where I feel like we really can create a society that's not so angry and mean all the time, and based on these huge discrepancies between people who live in lives of squalor and those who live in lives of so much affluence. They can't possibly enjoy it. They can't be happy with that much affluence. So this is economically, I think things could be better. And in terms of, having time off for your own life, for your own family, coming out of COVID, I think people are realizing, hey, why am I driving to work all day long, sitting in that posture at that chair, doing this thing over and over again? Is that the best thing we could be doing for humanity?
Right.
So I wouldn't mind staying home more, being around the kids, or going for a walk, take a nap, it's not so bad. I mean, the stars are still going to spin just like they do, whether we do it one way or the other, but how we live here on Earth is going to matter according to what we do or don't do. So I'm interested in that. That's where the technology comes in my mind, as an ethical concern, as well as a practical or one around efficiencies and comfort and all that. We have an ethics to live up to with our technologies and with our politics and the way we treat each other in society. Whether we're joining into the mad fray of everybody getting you back and snarky emails and all this meanness that's prevailed for a couple of decades now.
Yeah,
we don't have to do that. I come from the hippies, it's, hey brother, hey sister.
yeah, there's no reason to be so tense. There's a lot of pressure that has, that's been building for sure.
Yeah.
What would you tell someone that may be listening that may be interested in working with Wada Publishing House? What would you tell them as far as what you got out of this experience and why they ought to step forward and partake in the upcoming series?
I would encourage people to try to be authentic with whatever happened. It could be a little thing that happened. It doesn't have to be a huge dramatic thing. It might be some little realization or something you want to say that you hadn't said so far. Or, maybe it was a realization that you haven't shared or something, but go ahead and write it. Go ahead and write it down. Don't worry about how to write it. Good writing starts by just letting it flow, write a lot, and then you got to be willing to cut a lot. That's the hard part. You get attached to the words, but
that makes sense.
Yeah. And it helps to have people, either friends or a mentor of some sort, to keep the language crisp and clear, so that like I read books about writing, and it says good writing is concise. You get to the point, you make it point, bang, it's there, like a Hemingway sentence. It's just like works because it's short and to the point. And when I deal with other writers who are writing various sorts of things, I really appreciate it when they just go ahead and write it kind of brief, get it done, get it said, and then you can go back and touch it and make it more suitable for people that aren't using your own thoughts. Other people have their own thoughts and they're trying to read your thing through their thoughts. So then how do you convey that to them? Well, you got to have clear sentences, coherent paragraphs, some sort of a flow, some sort of a coming to the point, the climax of it and all that. And maybe I'm saying too much here. I think more important, just people do have stories, and humans love to hear each other's stories, and it's good for us to do that. So I would encourage people to go ahead and make an association with Radha and Maya and do some writing and see where it goes. You might end up writing something that everybody's excited about, and it opens up writing itself. Or it might help people just to read something that you've learned yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. What's next for you as far as in the works? Do you have a new project that's coming up, or
Yeah, actually, Maya knows. She's heard me complain that I'm trying to write a book that I have envisioned for over 50 years uh, that uses a scripture passage, the first page of the Bible, to set up a philosophical position. The first page of the Bible is the Genesis 1 story. The God is Elohim, which is a vague name for God, singular and plural, masculine and feminine. And Elohim creates the world in 6 days. People love to ridicule it because that's silly. Who can create something in 6 days? But I think of it more as 6 epochs of time. And they tend, in the story that got written down by somebody back when, they tend to follow what science is now telling us, that there was a big bang, there was light, there was water, there was land. Finally, there were plants, then there were fishes and animals, and then there were humans. And the important part about that one-page story is that each of those stages is called good by God. Then there's another creation story right after it. And there's no transition. It's just in the numbers, suddenly you're in a different thing. And it's the Garden of Eden story. There's a different God. It's Yahweh, singular and masculine, just descended from a war god kind of lineage, as it were. But in any case, it's a very artificial story where God takes mud and breathes life and takes the rib out and it becomes the woman. And then they're not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And they do. And you know the story, they get kicked out. And a lot of Christendom, and perhaps also, I don't know for sure, like in Jewish and Islamic religions, because they all use the same foundation for their scriptures. What Christians call the Old Testament is pretty much the same set of books that all 3 major theistic religions use. And so the first story, the Genesis 1, and then the Garden of Eden story are kind of core. But how they're understood is important, because they say that they have a rationale for what Adam and Eve did and whether we have original sin and what you got to do to fix that. You got to believe in order to be redeemed. You won't go to hell. All this stuff is a bunch of hooey. I think the story is clear. What was good was declared in the first story. Then you get a judgment of what's good and evil. We're going to know better what is good and evil, and we don't necessarily. And what it ends up doing is creating shame and blame and pain. Adam blames Eve, they have to hide their genitals, so they were naked before and there was no shame involved, and I've been around situations where that is the case with hippies or nudist colonies and things like that. There's no need for shame for our bodies. This is ridiculous. It's insulting to God to have shame. But they get kicked out. Now they have to toil, and there's pain in childbirth, and it goes on and on. And I think the whole story got messed up right there. And so I try to rewrite that and say, well, what if we really understood that what is good is those 6 goods that came out in the first story, and work with it? Then the book has been in process for years and years. What would Western history, there's like these trails of thought where, into some people's mind, to think for yourself is a disobedient thing to God. You should be obeying and believing instead. And I think that is a bunch of hooey. I think we're born with big brains because we're supposed to use them and not, abuse them and ignore them and shame them and all that. So I think we should be for ourselves. There's one word in that Genesis 1's part that gets seized upon. You should have dominion, dominion over the plants and animals and all that. Well, yeah, we do. We largely do. I mean, we can go under the water, we can go through the soil, go through the space, all that. But dominion doesn't necessarily mean you're like a mean king who takes all the goodies for himself. I think dominion is sovereignty, that we have our freeborn earthling abilities. And when we stand up in them, when we use our own brain, when we're authentic, when we are sensitive to our own empathy and compassion, that these are the goods that we will build up. And the goods in nature will be built up again. They won't be endlessly exhausted, extracted from, ruined ridden with plastic and toxic chemicals. This is crazy time we're living in terms of all that stuff. And we can fix it. You know, they'll come out with packaging that you can compost in the yard. You know, our cars, our electric cars are like, you know, 3 times cleaner to use if we're going to use cars at all than the gasoline powered ones or the diesels. So stuff like that comes to me out of these 2 stories, the Genesis 1 and the Genesis 2:3. Been trying to write the book for decades, and it's intermittent because I get distracted in other life things. And then I try to get back into it. And then I'm trying to remember quotes and books I read back in seminary, you know, 40 years ago. And so I have to restart it a few times. And if anybody's going to read a book that's that long and involved, it's got to be interesting writing. And it's a challenge to me to keep it going and to come out with something that hopefully really does help persons in themselves, persons with each other, the connections between us, persons in our society, how our attitudes, the memes that we generate and go by in society, persons in our democracy, in our various governments. And so I have a vision of us coming to peace with the fact that we are freeborn earthlings and that everybody is and they ought to be, you know. So I have a symbol for that. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Byron. I mean, you have a brilliant mind, and I'm really thrilled for people to read your chapter and the upcoming book that you'll be working on. Well, have been working on.
Yeah, I have been.
Yeah, for quite a while.
Show you right here. I got books all over the floor.
The true philosopher. I love it.
Well,
I feel like
the books and the guitar too.
I'll have to have you on another time so we can hear a little bit further more, because it sounds like you have a lot of really great things to share with the world. And again, like I said, I look forward to everyone hearing, you know, through your perspective, your chapter in Awakening Starseeds Volume 2 that just came out. What I'm going to do is I'll link below your information. If you have a website, we'll provide that for people to get a hold of you.
Sure. Yeah, they can go to my website and read stuff and see stuff. I put stuff there every month.
Excellent.
At the last minute, usually. By the way, thank you for this nice interview, Danielle. And I wish you success and interesting ventures because of your new, you're posting a new, like a podcast site or something. Is that what you said?
Yeah. I'll have a YouTube channel up and I'm going to add it
YouTube channel, right.
on a podcast. Correct. Yeah, we'll be sure to, thank you. We'll be sure to have you on there sometime. But yeah, if anybody's interested in reaching out directly to Byron, please do. And of course, Rada Publishing, we'll be sure to link all the information down below. Be sure to get your copy of Awakening Starseeds Volume 2 that just came out. And you have until the 17th, practically giving away for free. So definitely here to serve humanity.
I'm really happy for them. They put a lot of energy into this and the writers that they've brought, everybody's done a lot. So I'm really jazzed for them. Thank you, Daniel.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you again. Have a good evening. Bye, everybody.
Bye.